Hey, what's up, guys? It's Brian, and I wanted to talk about um, standard for Magic the Gathering and Friday Night Magic FNM in particular, and ostensibly why it sucks. Um, so we'll go into FNM first. Okay. FNM is sometimes it's draft, but most places don't do draft for FNM because the price point is too high, and not many people want to do it like that. So what do they do? What do most stores do whenever they have FNM? Standard, right? So you make your standard deck, right? And a good standard deck costs anywhere between $100 and $200, sometimes more. Generally, if you want to make a good one, because you got to pay for the duels, and you got to pay for like the mythics, and you got to pay for the planeswalkers and all that stuff. So that gets pretty pricey. And then you're going to go to a store and play FNM. Now, FNM is usually right now. There's always going to be, oh well, my store's not like this. They do this awesome thing, and that's possible, right? But I'm talking about generalities here. Okay, most FNMs are 3 to 4 round Swiss with the prizes generally being packs. Okay, and you get a pack usually for every round you win, right? So you've got this $200 deck, and you're playing for packs. Now, packs in the old days, circa 2005 and like before, used to be worth something, because you could crack open a pack, and since every card was basically worthless, whenever you did get a rare, that one rare really helped. So there were only a couple good cards in every set, and you getting that one rare meant something. So cracking a pack for no reason was great. Now the only reason to get packs is to draft. Right, and I'll get into that later. So you're taking this $200 deck, you're bringing it in, you're playing 3 or 4 rounds of Swiss, and even if you win, you're only going to get 4 or 5 packs, which is the equivalent of nothing. Some really cool stores that are around in some locations will still offer store credit, which lets you get rares, which is worth it. Okay. Generally, though, for FNM, because of the way they have it set up, because the stores don't get paid that much to run FNM, FNM is more of a you are allowed to run FNM, so you get extra business. They're going to skimp on it as much as possible and maybe run another tournament later or earlier in the week. So FNM is usually just pack returns. So you pay your entry fee, which is usually about 5 bones, right, to play for packs. And whenever I was running FNM, I got back into playing standard like a year and a half ago, and then I quit after about 6 months. And it was because I would get 2 or 3 packs because I didn't feel like shelling out a whole bunch of money to get the best decks. I just played with jank that I had lying around, or like whatever I could like trade for, or whatever was cheap in the case, right? So I'd win 2 or 3 games, and I'd get my packs, and then be like, why did I even do this? Because the only other thing to do with those packs is to draft them. And here's where the problem comes in. Because the packs themselves are almost literally worthless, like cracking them. Like I would literally sit there and watch people win and then crack their packs and be like, oh, I didn't get anything. And it's like, yeah, I know you didn't get anything, because the odds of getting anything worthwhile out of these new sets is limited, right? And the only thing that people actually care about, because most of the rares are god-awful, like literally god-awful rares. Like most rares are crap. Most mythics are crap. And because Standard is so specialized now, because everyone's ostensibly running the exact same deck with just different colors, everyone's running tempo, right? Any cards that don't fit into tempo are automatically bad. You can have a great control card, it's worth nothing. Okay, it might be a $5 rare. Whenever you trade that in, how much you get? Well, if you're trading it into, the best place to trade it into usually, unless you have a really great card shop, is like Star City or something like that. That's where you're going to get your most money, right? And on a $5 rare, the best you're going to get is half. Best. Half store credit, right? Or even worse for cash. So, I see people cracking these packs open. It's like, why are you even bothering? You know they're not going to be worth anything. The only reason to keep the packs is to draft. And with the way that people draft now, in the old days, whenever I was a youngin', you would draft, and you would draft for rares at the end, right? So you could pluck the best rare that you wanted out of your first pack. It could be that foil great card, right, that's worth $80, right? You could crack that and grab it. The end of the draft, everyone had to put in their rares into the center. Whoever won got first rare choice. Whoever got second rare choice, and on and on. So if you grab an $80 card and placed 8th out of your like 8th players, you're gonna get the 8th rare, and then it's gonna keep going around, and you get 3 cracked rares. That's how it works. That's how it used to work. Now, most places, they have you pay into a pot to pay for packs for winners, right? So you can draft that great $80 card, lose the entire thing, not even care. I have literally seen people crack a pack, get an amazing rare, and then just randomly draft cards and then leave. Because their draft was paid for. They go up, they trade it in, they get twice as much in store credit that they pay for the draft at like the very least. They do their thing, they make their bank, and they're done. As well they should be. You shouldn't even bother with it. At that point, playing the draft is almost useless. Like, you might as well just go and draft another draft because you just paid for your draft. Right? So this is the problem with FNM, is you get an expensive deck. There's always tempo, by the way, because that's what's good in FNM. That's what wins qualifiers. That's what wins FNMs. That's what wins everything, is tempo right now. And they're catering the sets more and more to have people play tempo. They're not handing good counter spells for blue. They're making the removal worse and harder to use. They're making the creatures better and the spells worse. And it's creating this environment where everyone plays tempo. So you might have someone playing red-green tempo, or blue-black tempo, or blue-white tempo. But it's always tempo. It doesn't matter. So all of the cards that you used to be able to sell for good money, a really good control card, it's not worth anything. So the number of rares that are actually of value get so truncated. And you get a lot of cards that look good at the start because everyone thinks, oh, well, this is kind of like old Magic. Maybe it won't be tempo again. So they get a lot of cards that look good, and they skyrocket in price at the very start whenever you have that like initial like, oh, what's this new set going to be about? This is like a whole new block. This could change everything. A lot of those cards shoot up. 2 weeks they're worth like $3 to $5 max, right? And so that's what happens. The cards don't have any value longevity. The only ones that really have any value longevity are a couple of the rares out of each set. And I'm talking a couple, like 4. And Planeswalkers. Nothing else holds its value. Whenever I was playing Standard last, one of the really great cards was Gravewalker. I think the 2/1 that, like, for a black, that whenever whenever he was in your graveyard and you had a creature in play, you could pay a black and bring him into play. He was good, right? But he turned out to not be good because everyone was playing tempo, right? So at first, whenever everything was like released, he was a $20 rare. He sunk down to like $3 or $4 really quick. That's why I ended up running him in my deck, because he was cheap. He was a cheapy rare at that point, even though he was a really good card. And that's what happens with FNM. And so I'm going to move this on to my problem with standard. It's all tempo. There's really no control. No one really even tries that anymore because it loses to tempo every time. And even if it doesn't lose to tempo every time, there's no good sideboard against tempo because tempo is tempo. It's almost always two color, so it's hard to sideboard. And it makes it really difficult to actually have a control deck. And you can try whatever colors you want, but control is dependent upon a couple of things. Mass removal, okay, to let you get the advantage of cards that you need in order to win with a slower deck. Really quality spot removal, which is lacking, aside from like every color usually has one spell, but in order to run really good decks, you need at least 8 cards that are good spot removal if you want to run control. And the counter spells are all crap. You get stuff like cancel. You know, M14 has syncopate. There's no like mana leak. There's no force spike. There's no stuff like forbid, force of will, or even counter spell. Right? They're cutting into this stuff. They're making the burn worse, so you can't counteract the tempo. If they put more burn spells into standard, tempo literally cannot exist because you will be like, I'm playing this tempo deck, and your opponent will be like, lightning bolt. Is that game? Do you scoop? Do you enter scoop phase because of lightning bolt now? And the answer would be yes. Tempo gets shut down by good removal. It also gets shut down by cheap, usable mass removal, like Wrath of God and stuff like that. But because everyone's running tempo, it's not worth it to try and cultivate these control decks. Without control, there's no reason to have anything that's like Sly. There's no reason to have Rushdown. Because without control, Rushdown doesn't have a place to really bloom. Right? So without having... Because we've always had tempo. We've always had tempo in Magic the Gathering. It's always been a thing. But we haven't always had all tempo. And if you don't have those other kinds of decks, if you don't have control, then you can't have Rushdown. If you don't have Rushdown, you can't have control. And whenever tempo becomes the way to play, regardless of color and regardless of card choice, you know, and it just becomes this thing where everyone's playing tempo. So you might as well just play tempo and try to change it up a little bit, tweak it slightly to make you have an edge. Because the sideboard doesn't matter. If you look at how people used to play when, you know, it was circa 2005 and before, or even 2007, you know, after first game, 4 cards would get sideboarded in. Now, people don't even touch their sideboards usually. Like, why would you even look at your sideboard? There's nothing in it that is good against tempo. You can't, because everything that's good against tempo is going to be good against you too. Because you're playing tempo. And that was the key to sideboarding, was that whenever you were playing control, you could go into your sideboard and get things that were good against Sly, that was good against Rushdown, that was good against tempo. Right? And you were like, I'm playing control, so I'm going to play this sideboard card. Now it doesn't matter. Same thing if you were playing Sly. If you were like, I'm playing Sly, but I'm playing against a control deck, there are cards that will help me play better against a control deck. Such as, I don't know, a Red Elemental Blast or something like that. You know, you could sideboard those things in. Right? Now it doesn't matter. People hardly even touch their sideboards. And I know at higher levels of play, at like the qualifiers and stuff, people do touch their sideboards more. But generally, for average play, against average decks, you're not touching your sideboard that often. And that is, for me, a true sign of the fact that everything is becoming whitewashed in Standard. Everything's becoming whitewashed in FNM. And it makes the game suffer, because it makes it less viable. As soon as you're not sideboarding, that means that there's not enough change in between each deck to make it worthwhile. So that's why FNM sucks. That's why current Standard sucks, because everything's tempo, everything's Planeswalker. You can look at like the decks, and it doesn't matter if it was like today's deck right here, that's like the top, or if it was, 6 months ago's, everyone is running Planeswalker Tempo, or something that looks a lot like it. And they might have some tricks in there. They might run some counter spells. They might run some burn. They might run some discard. But it's still the same decks. It's Planeswalker, Tempo, huge bombs, and that's it. And that's the environment, and that's what it's become. That's why it sucks. That's why FNM sucks. That's why Standard sucks. So, there you go. I hope they fix it at some point. They probably won't, because they make more money jerking people around and making everyone play Tempo and having only 4 of the rares out of every set being worth anything. So, cheers.